You are Navdeep Chandel, and you are the professor of medicine, biochemistry, and molecular genetics at Northwestern University in Chicago. So in your research, you have always had an interest in the function of mitochondria, and you have extensively studied, for instance, their role in reactive oxygen species release. So how are you today?
I am well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for being here today. So in these times of COVID, has your worldview changed the way you see life in general?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it has. Uh, there's many things, but I will say one of the things that has surprised me in the science world. So, and this is going to be quite snippy on my part and
Go
snarky.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm okay with it because I've been wanting to get this off my chest, as they say, which is that the late, I mean, it was a long time ago, Andy Warhol.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he said in the future something like, everybody will have their 15 minutes of fame. And wow, I am really shocked at how much the scientific community really took that to heart. I mean, as far as I can tell, about maybe 1 out of 100 scientists can spell COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yet 99 of them have become experts in it.
That's true.
I just find it maddening. I mean, there are people who are cardiologists, oncologists. There are like people, all sorts of them, who just started changing their labs. Like, and in the end, what did we learn about COVID? We know the structure, of the SARS-CoV-2. We know the sequence. We know how to do the PCR testing. And then we have a vaccine. Those two things are spot on. The pathogenesis of it is still very murky, right? Why are people symptomatic versus asymptomatic? How do people die? Newsflash, it turns out largely pneumonia. The only reason I know this is because I sit next to the ICU chief at Northwestern University. So I actually got, sort of a bird's eye view over the last year of exactly what's happening in the ICU, what's happening. And they actually did clinical research. They just had a beautiful paper in Nature about where they did single cell on the COVID patients to get a sort of a resolution of just asking what players are there, T cells, macrophages, neutrophils, and, there seems to be a crosstalk between macrophages and T cells. So my point is, people like that are the real heroes. They work in the ICU, they do research, and you never see them on TV.
Yeah,
see all sorts of random people on TV. It's amazing. And it's like, and of course, they become sort of the public voices, as in America at least. And, I have my loved ones saying, oh, did you hear person X and Y say this? I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. But let me get back to you because I'll go and talk to my ICU chief and he'll be like, no, who says that? I go, well, there's somebody on TV who says that. And who's getting, there was some doctors on the Senate hearings who had, were ridiculous. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, COVID unfortunately infected a lot of people, which resulted on terrible deaths, but infected a lot of minds.
That's true.
And it shows you, I think, one of the things that scientists, which I always knew, there's a little bit of this sanctimonious sort of behavior among us that we're better than the public. We're not. We're humans. We have the same frailties that, humankind has had since Aristotle started pointing out.
That's
some stuff.
very true. Very
And
true.
that, I sort of knew that. I mean, some people who are listening say, oh, gee, no, you're so naive. Yeah, maybe I am. Maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic. I always have been. I don't think it changes my optimism about life, but wow, I'm really surprised.
So, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
I actually don't like the word happiness.
Okay.
I really
correct that. What would be a better word?
I think people who feel like they have a voice and a purpose generally will feel some sort of contentment. Of course, there are the general euphoria of the endorphins and the cannabinoids that get released from exercise or, something that stimulates you. And of course, there's this terrible sadness that comes, for example, like COVID, whether it's mental health or actual physical issues. So those are the natural, highs and lows of life, and you need them to appreciate. It's kind of like seasons, right? I live in Chicago. I'm still thankful because the winters are brutal, and right now it's 65, and I feel amazing that it's 65, right? So I think, so we should just step back. I have a daughter. I just spent the weekend with her in New York, and we talked a lot about this, and I told her, I said, I never talk to her about happiness anymore. I sort of tell her, look, if I look back now, what are things that are good for me personally? One is family and friends. Again, different people have different amounts in terms of numbers, but I think having some proximity to family and friends helps. And family, I mean loosely, it doesn't have to be biologic, consider people who are not biologic, but having some sort of a close knit of somebody that you're close to that you can talk to, and then having a social network around it. And that could be through science. In my case, is also through soccer, my passion. It could be anything. I think being connected. And you see this with Facebook, right? But it's anonymous, which has its own issues. But nevertheless, people, again, Aristotle said, a man is a social animal, something like that, right? I mean, I think that's true. So you need that. The second one is, I think you need a purpose, whatever that is, and again, whatever you can find that fulfills you, but have some, and largely I would argue having a purpose that's positive for the world we live in. The person who's going to the bus driver who's going to take me after this interview to work, right? They're fulfilling a great purpose, at least for me, and hopefully they feel within that purpose. Clearly, I think people need to feel like they're being heard. They have a voice, and I think this is the great challenge now going forward, because so many different groups, cultures, genders, race are saying, I want to be heard. I want to be heard, and they should be, and we should be better at that. We all can be better at that, definitely myself. So I think, and then the third one, which I probably took for granted just because maybe my own genetic makeup, my own upbringing, which is physical and mental wellness. I think we should pay more attention to that, because I think when we physically feel better and mentally feel better, then you can have a clarity of mind for that purpose and how to have a voice and how to engage with other people in a social network. And so for me, I define sort of those things as, the positive purpose of life. They're very difficult, especially the third one. And I'm a big believer now that, if you need help with your prediabetes, take metformin. Or if you need with your depression, take, I mean, use whatever to help you. Exercise, pharmaceuticals, etc. Statins for cholesterol, under doctor supervision, get a little help. I'm really excited about these psychedelics. I mean, this is coming from somebody who's never used a drug in his life. So open disclosure, variety of reasons, but which probably would shock most people who know that I like to have a good time. But nevertheless, the psychedelics, Tim Ferriss introduced this idea. I was on his podcast years ago, and he introduced me to this idea on how he thought psychedelics at low dosing could help people. And I think there are trials at Hopkins and other places. And so, hey, whatever works. But I would say wellness, find a purpose and voice, and a social network.
Agree. What was the last gift you gave someone?
The last gift I gave someone, the gifts that I typically give are books.
Good ones.
Yeah, I like to give books. Sometimes my own. You didn't that in the introduction. Cheap plug.
Even better.
I wrote a book called Navigating Metabolism.
Actually, I've read pieces of that one. So
my labor of love to introduce the wonderful world of metabolism to the next generation. There's some great books on biochemistry, like Leninger and Stryer, and they still should be the go-to books, but they don't sometimes relate it to biology. So I wrote a small book on how metabolism relates to biology. And to my surprise, the book has done well, maybe a little better than I expected, because when I give a talk now, years ago, the first thing somebody would say is Dr. Chandel, some young person, nice talk, I really enjoyed reading your paper, et cetera, et cetera. Now, none of them say that. They just introduce themselves and say, I love your book. I get a lot of use out of it. And I think that might be all I got is the book. All those hundreds of papers, we're still doing, I think, interesting science. No one cares, just a book. But I'm okay. I'm glad I could contribute in a small way to the metabolism field. There'll be a second edition in 2024, so
Okay.
Version, because it came out
down.
in 2015. Yeah.
So, which superpower would you like to have?
I haven't thought enough about that. I have not. Probably something with brain, obviously, rather than. I haven't thought about it, to be honest with you. It's an interesting question, and I'm trying to. I'm not
be invisible or want to fly or.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Probably something like mind hacking,
That would be cool.
Where you can read people's minds or intentions or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's dangerous because you would take the spontaneity and the joy of life, right? So I don't know. I haven't thought. Probably because I like them, but I'm not like a huge fan of. I mean, I watch them like everybody else, Superman. I'm more of the the real life James Bond sort of love.
Well, there's a lot of superpowers.
Yeah. I mean, my superhero comes down to James Bond. Sadly, Sean Connery died last year.
Yeah, well, true that. Yes, good one. So, what is the craziest thing you have ever done?
I don't know. Which is the right answer, right? Because usually you're probably a bit inebriated, so you don't remember. It means you had a good time doing it.
Yeah, but I bet you have a few crazy things.
I just, a friend of mine once from the hypoxia field who's known me for a really long time. I remember we were at dinner a couple of years ago, and somebody was sitting at dinner and said, "Oh, you've known Nav for 25 plus years. I'm sure you have stories." And the person just sort of turned and said, "Don't you? Doesn't everybody?" I think that's probably true. There could be a whole book about it. Something.
Well, maybe that's the next book.
Yeah. I'm sure. There's plenty out there.
Okay, well, let me ask you this in a different way. If you had a theme song, what would it be?
If I had a theme song, I don't know. I can't. I love music a lot. I'm just blanking right now on all the music that I like. Let me answer it in a different way. Okay. I like the Nike slogan, "Just do it."
Just do it.
I like the Nike slogan. I was watching The Crown, and as many people have, and there's this part where Prince Philip, who has this quite a challenging upbringing, and I think a reporter was asking a young Prince Philip, like, how did he deal with his mother in an asylum and all sorts of a father who was not as loving and quite taught, and just sort of all the different, and then him becoming not the king but a prince and being sort of the second fiddle back, especially in the 50s, all of this stuff. And he just sort of said, you just get on with it, right? I've always sort of had that, my own sort of thing. I rarely dwell on the past and rarely dwell on the future.
Mm-hmm.
I completely trained myself to be much more in the present.
Well, that's a good skill to have, especially nowadays. So I agree. Yeah, yeah.
So I would something like that along some song that reflects those themes.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. And I watched The Crown too. Good one. So what do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Oh, I don't know. Throw a few out. Again, I'm blanking. I'm blanking what virtue is.
Honesty or or well, virtues would there be? Yeah. Honesty or
Hard work.
hard work or dedication to work or
I don't know if it's a virtue, but taking yourself too seriously, sanctimonious, maybe. You like that one?
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Will do. Thank you. Good.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah,
Myself
probably.
included. But I think nothing good comes out of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Nothing good.
So what do you consider to be the closest thing to real magic?
Real magic?
Real magic.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Don't believe in magic. Sorry.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
I can. By the way, let me just flip that about the virtue
Mm-hmm.
thing that just sparked me. What I have found consistently in my life, and it actually occurred to me on a trip. I've always had it, but I never talked about it. And of all places, I told my friend Ralph Deverdinas in Kyoto in one of these spiritual places, walking with him, and I said to Ralph, Ralph, if I think about it, I can almost to a T um, my state of despair, anxiety, so-called unhappiness is linked to when I have a mental craving, not a physical craving, if you're hungry, you want to drink, whatever, right? Whatever physical senses. No, but like a real mental craving, when one has mental cravings, it's, it could be, God, I got to work so I could get a bigger house. My paper needs, we just submitted the paper, checked constantly. And we've been all guilty of it, especially as we're younger. But I have found that when I'm in that state ever, I'm incredibly anxious. I can't sleep. I think lots of people are, they're being honest. And I think that's something that one should guard against as much as possible. That idea of being, mentally craving, if I can get this, therefore I will be happy. And it just isn't that way. It just isn't that way.
Yeah.
Physical things are real, right? I mean, you need to fulfill your senses. That I get, that I understand, but the mental stuff can be challenging. I know you didn't ask me that, but I'd throw that
But
out.
that's a good answer anyway, regardless. That's a good point. That's a very good point. The next question would be, on what occasion do you lie? But I don't know if it's a good fit here.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, I'm not, thinking that you would, but if
uh,
you did.
I think most of us lie to ourselves. We build a narrative, whether it's real or not real, and it helps us get through the complexity of life.
Mm-hmm. Which is complex. That's true. Who would you like to have as a next door neighbor?
Oh, unfortunately, he died.
But anybody.
Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Bless his soul.
Bless his soul. I liked his humor, his intelligence, his ability to appreciate nuances and details, his openness to cultures, and most of all, his incredible irreverence. He's an original.
Yeah, true that. What would you like to understand better?
How humans make decisions.
Mm-hmm. What would you like people in general to understand better?
Same thing.
Okay.
Somebody votes a certain way, why somebody has faith in something,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody doesn't, what's the, I think trying to make sense of, because what I've realized, if I just step back and I ask some, if I go back to those three principles I talked about earlier, does Krista have family? And does she have a social network? I'm just going to say yes. I don't know you that personally, but I'll just say yes. Does she have a purpose? As in a voice? From what I can tell, yes, I'm going to say that, right? Does that person seem physically healthy or mentally, wellness? I'm just going to say yes, sure, without knowing you well, right? So I know lots of people like that, but then you see them make decisions and the things that they're attached to that make you go, and I'm sure they think the same about me, right? But at a core, it's all the same, right? This person is incredibly, from what I can tell, a valuable, positive member of society, but they chose to vote this way. They choose to believe in magic, magic realism, perhaps, or they choose to believe in witches. Obviously a higher faith. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And sometimes when they reveal that people go, I didn't expect that from that person. And does that change your opinion, or should it change you? And I would argue probably not. If they have those other basic tenets they're doing and they're a positive member of society and a good friend, even though they may have a different point of view, I struggle with it sometimes. You're like, I can't believe this person, did X and Y. And I'm sure people say the same towards me, And sometimes it could be something as silly as music, I think, it's interesting in dinner conversation when music comes, there's clearly a divide between people a generation above me, still like classical music and certain ones. I like dance music. I'm sorry. I love dance music. I love DJ music. People think it's ridiculous, but it's not ridiculous because I grew up on it. It's not only for my daughter's generation. My generation sort of developed DJ music, and I DJ'd even at one point. I mean, I think this is, so I'm attracted to that sort of music still. And I grew up with it, just like the baby boomers grew up with Mick Jagger, and the Rolling Stones, who are still killing it at 75.
They are.
I think, that human behavior, human decision making, why people make the decisions they do in life.
So thinking of all the talents that you have, which one is the useless, do you think?
What is my useless talent?
Most useless talent.
First, we got to go through what the talents are. What is my useless talent?
You don't have to have one. They might, all be very useful.
Oh, I don't have that many talents. Let's start with that. So when you're down to only a few, you really hold on.
Yeah, you want to hang on to them. Cool.
Yeah, I would say I'm limited in the talent thing. I've got a pretty, because I have math training originally as a math major, so I have a decent logical mind, which I can tell the difference between causality and correlation. So that's a check. I like to laugh and be humorous, so want to hold on to that. I think it's not a useless talent, but it perhaps might be overrated, which is being an extrovert. So I jokingly say I'm the most extroverted person that I know. I don't have trouble going up to somebody, doesn't matter who they are, and saying, "Hi, I'm Nav." But I think there, you read books and you see these psychologists say, "Oh, people who are extroverted are, have some advantage," and they'll say something, right? I'm not sure. I think I'm not totally, and then convinced of that. Of course, someone can say, "Well, how would you know, right? This is a thought experiment," but maybe going back to having voices heard, maybe we, as a society, we should try to sort of re-engage in how we think about the diversity of personalities, and how to have a diversity of personalities be heard. I know there's a huge, and rightfully so, push on equity and inclusion, largely based on gender, cultures, and race. I would argue that that's totally fine, but let's don't forget diversity of opinions and personalities, because you could grow up, and I've seen this, where you have, at least in America, an American-born white in suburbia X of certain wealth status, and I've seen kids who are Indians who are in the same group, or blacks or Latinos. I don't know, their diversity of thought among them isn't that divergent, because they look the same way in some ways, right? And they have obviously their own unique perspectives that they still bring, and I don't want to minimize that, but we do need diversity of thought. And in addition to all the other diversity, equity, and inclusion that we're currently, talking about, and how to bring those voices. And so I'm a big fan of diversity. And so I think sometimes being an extrovert is a bit overrated.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
I haven't had any, so.
Well, I think you have had a few. Where I'm standing, so.
I think I think there's I'll just keep it more in the scientific realm. I would say in the scientific realm, there's just simply two. I'll start to take a little bit of credit for getting the community to think about mitochondria beyond powerhouse and ATP.
Yes.
I think I'm not the only one, by no means, but I've been hammering away since the mid 90s, since 96, 97, this concept. We call it mitochondria signaling organelles. There are others, obviously, before me who started talking about it. But I think, I've been on the stage a lot over the years and doing things like this and writing lots of reviews and all that. And it has a consistent theme that, yes, mitochondria ATP is important, but there's more to mitochondria and how they're communicating. And I think sort of contributing to that field, and now that field is growing, and being sort of one of the original people in that field and thinking about it. I think that the second one is I think I've been a pretty good mentor. I probably my proudest moment was 10 years ago. So I've had a lab for about 21 years. So in year 13, I got an award at Northwestern for mentoring. It was a faculty award throughout Northwestern. So you could be from business, law, and I think I was the first one from the medical school who got it. Typically, it's always a humanities sort of major or a business, but so it was a good faculty. It was called the Versteeg Mentoring Faculty for Graduate Students, and this was my own graduate students. About a dozen of them wrote sort of letters, and they submitted, and eventually I got those letters back, and that was quite touching. And I think generally, I've been a pretty good mentor to, I've been, sort of shared, the wealth of metabolism with many others on stage and in review articles. I think I've been a very benevolent reviewer, definitely, because I have a simple theory about reviewing. If it's interesting, which is my judgment, could argue, but then have they done it to the best of the abilities based on the current techniques? Right? If it involves generating a brand new technique, new mice, and all of this, which will take 2-3 years, forget it. Who cares? Let them publish a paper that's interesting, that's done to the best of the ability. And if I can think of a quick experiment they can do, I always say, do this, this, and this, and let history be the judge. Nature, Cell, or Science are not the final verdict.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. If you would have one word to describe yourself, what would that word be?
That's a good one. I think I'm kind.
Good. Which lab experiment do you perform best?
Personally?
Yeah.
Currently?
Currently or ever, or yeah, which lab experiment is the one that you are a killer in?
None now, because the technology keeps on. But typically it would have to be like isolating some mitochondria the old-fashioned way and just throwing like sucks in it and seeing if it respires.
Yeah, okay, so that was what you were best in.
Yeah,
in the lab,
pretty
in the
much.
lab.
Nothing in molecular biology or genetics. I still don't understand all of that stuff.
Okay. In your lifetime, which job has taught you the most?
I've only had one.
Not even as a young one, or when you first started working, summer jobs, anything. It can be the one that you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I went to college when I was 17, and I guess I worked in like an editorial office sort of thing. I hated it. It was like a
Wasn't that one?
it was like a clerk job, and then it was all in science. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I haven't had, I couldn't say, oh, I was a lifeguard or I was a bartender or something cool like that. No, I've been a nerd most of my life.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Two more questions. When and where did you last feel absolute peace of mind?
When and last did I feel absolute? It was probably on a beach, staring out in the ocean with a margarita. It's not clear if the margarita induces that or the beach or whatever, but something like that.
All together.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like peace of mind. And final question, to your 20-year-old self, which one advice would you give him?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. But because, I don't want to, I could go on for another 30 minutes and we're not going to do that. This is probably a lot longer than you expect.
No, that's fine. You can go on.
I would, because this is a science, I would keep it strictly, let's just focus on the science. I had no idea what a business of science has become. Maybe it was always like this, I doubt it. We are now too big to fail. We are way too much corporate. This is, what did Eisenhower say? Beware of the industrial military complex, beware of the industrial medical complex. It is just out of control. For every scientist, there's an administrator one-to-one. That's completely ridiculous. It's over-compliant, it's over-regulated. It has way too many MBA. It has way too many consulting types. Consultants kill creativity. You have that as a quote. They're great once you have a product that needs to be managed, a final product, vaccines, right? Have consultants. They have a great value to add to those. They don't have much value to add to me.
Mm-hmm.
The business class doesn't. They need to understand that. They do once we want to bring my science to the product. The venture capitalists are great, and they're important. And there's a lot of smart people in venture capitalism and consulting and the MBA types who understand science more and more. And I'm very grateful because I've dealt with many of these people. I'm super impressed. But that only happens once I say, Krista, I have a way to solve Parkinson's. We have, target X in the mitochondria, and we have this and this is how it's going to lay out, and they can vet it, and they can bring that whole management class of people. But how I got to it, stay out of my world. Now, you can't be totally Pollyannish about it and say, just give me money without any accountability. Of course, we have to have a system, peer review and how we dole out money, et cetera. But largely, I think we've had way, way too much influence of the industrial medical complex. And also sometimes the MDs, they see the real tragedies, and you could imagine they want to just put something in a patient to fix it. But it takes 25 years. There's a great, and I'll finish with this. Maybe you can put these links. I've never met the gentleman boy, but I do want to meet this person. A guy named Mark Fishman. I think he's at Harvard now. I think he's a cardiologist. He's written two pieces that I've really enjoyed. One of them is in Science Translational Medicine, Fundamental Discoveries Behind Today's Medicine. Writes about how long it took all of the discoveries from their inception to where they are. I mean, I think people like Peter Ratcliffe, Greg Simmons, and Bill Kaelin definitely talk about it, how the discovery of HIF in the early 90s to the PhDs in 01 to now finally drugs in anemia. That's 30 years, right? You can do that with immunotherapy. So it takes a long time. You look at the people, the Hungarian scientist, the woman behind the mRNA vaccines at Penn, almost 25 years ago. There's all these amazing stories. Read Codebreakers, the Jennifer Doudna biography by Walter Isaacson. It's really a biography of CRISPR, and you also find out this has been going on for some time, right? The other thing he just wrote with Mark Kirshner is in Stat News about how I was so happy someone finally wrote it, how all these administrators are on top of us, and you can't engineer this stuff. We're not engineers, right? We're not making products. We're basic discoveries. So I'll leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that. And thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you for this. It's been great.